biodiversity, Ocean European Green Deal, just transition, and circular economy. I am passionate about fostering research and actively engaged in the development of innovative public policy. That's why, as an academic, I am dedicated to bridging the gap between research and policy implementation. I would like to invite you to follow me. Wait a minute. Okay. I'd like to invite you to follow UCOP project. That is an international project on climate change negotiation, open to students worldwide, with the purpose of training the future generation leaders. This project is sponsored by Université of Mont'Alverne, Université de Paris, Federal University of Sierra. I currently lead 3 key projects focused on climate change, ocean, and energy transition issues. These projects are closely connected to the European Union agenda. Furthermore, I believe it's crucial to highlight the role of researchers in advocating for the inclusion of vulnerable communities, ultimately striving to enhance the quality of life for various stakeholders. Today, we will focus on the crucial theme of advancing and safeguarding sustainable development through international agreements. Initially, in an introductory manner, it's important to provide some context on the central theme of today's lectures before delving into the integration of sustainable development into international agreements. Let's start with a quick quiz to evaluate your comprehension of the promotion of sustainable development on the multilateral agenda. This will pave the way for a deeper analysis of the political and legal dynamics surrounding the multilateral sustainable development agenda. Please. Let's start with a quick quiz.
Could you enter the...
Everybody's faith? Can you start?
Can you try again, please?
Can you try again, please?
Okay, I have one person already too.
Just one person? Or four? How many? Five. Where are you?
Have David, Elizabeth, Georgios, Eileen, Aulana, Mayara.
How many?
6.
10. And so, no, you didn't.
I'm having bad internet, so.
Okay.
No problem. No.
Very slow.
Okay.
If you can do together in couples. The first, okay, on 8.
8.
Anyone else?
Can we start? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Tem não.
Você tá ok? Nice. Okay? 12, okay? Yeah. Okay, let's start. Very quick.
You have 30 seconds to answer each question.
Let's start. Go.
Okay.
Please, no. Nobody. No, I can't believe it. Let's go. The second question, please. Now it's better. Last question. Next question. Cesar. Four. Seven. The next one. NDC. What is NDC? The next one. We are finished. Wow. Perfect. Questions? Who is David? Wow, David. Very good, David. Who is sick? Congratulations. Yes. Yes.
Porque ele tinha que todo mundo acertou. Mas apareceu na televisão. Cada um santa.
Congrats. And then like question.
Não, tá bem, fala com o filho. Também. Não, vai aparecer o local. Eles ficam aparecendo na frente do código para identificação. Okay, so congratulations, Steve. You won the quiz.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you were so.
Quantos acertaram? Todos. Quantos eles acertaram?
Dá para ver 6 ou 7. Não dá para ver agora só o nome.
So, what do you think about this quiz? No. I think that's a great exercise before to start to talk about sustainable development. I think that's important to know the level of the class today. So as our focusing on law, I believe that's important to start with I believe that's important to start with a fundamental question. Can we truly safeguard the environmental, the data, the engagement of international law? What do you think about? Why not?
Of states referring to their sovereignty in international agreements, economic growth, prevailing over
Okay. Environment.
Yes,
Yeah.
also I think through international law, you can enforce certain measures to be taken. And if those measures aren't met, you can see the state in court.
Yeah.
Also more long term, so maybe some political leaders want to do something about the environment, and then it's fine. But if they are changed, then at least you can fall back on the international law.
Yes. In fact, it's crucial to make some brief consideration about the importance of international instruments and multilateral conferences for environmental protection. These insights will provide valuable context for understanding the evolution and progress of sustainable development on the international agenda. Environmental issues transcend local, national, and regional boundaries, become truly a global issue. For this reason, it's imperative to reflect on normative and institutional international frameworks, especially in addressing transboundary pollution, global crises like climate change and ocean emergencies, and the exponential loss of biodiversity. These environmental challenges know no borders. They exceed political, economic, and ideological issues. In other words, the physical environment does not recognize state borders. Some professors assert that national entity or local laws are insufficient in the face of international risks of natural disasters. What's your opinion? Do you agree? Everyone agrees or not? That the national or local laws are insufficient?
Yes,
Yes.
because environmental issues kind of has global
Challenges.
yeah.
David, is that David?
Sorry.
What do you think about the local laws?
Uh,
Sufficient or not? What do you think about?
I think it should be arranged in an international level. So there's alignment between states concerning environmental protection.
Yes, sure. That's why cooperation between countries, both at the regional and global levels, as well as within countries themselves, is considered essential for advancing sustainable development. Therefore, it's imperative to contemplate enhancing international cooperation and maximizing the multilateral system potential to explore the pivotal roles various international stakeholders have or haven't played in promoting sustainable development. In this context, let's dive into the emergence of international environmental protection. The pivotal question arises. I love questions. The pivotal question arises when and how this recognition of the importance of the international environmental law occurs and whether all stakeholders are indeed involved in this process. According to the French professor Alexander Keys, the year 1968 marks the onset of what he calls the ecological era. Why? Because during this period, several institutions and states began adopting specific instruments for international or regional environmental protection. For instance, the Council of Europe made significant strides by adopting two crucial declarations. The first one, addressing air pollution, and the other, focusing on the protection of the water resource. Moreover, the Organization of African Units took a notable step by approving the African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, a pioneering text in this domain at that time. Finally, in 1968, during the spring session of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, Sweden proposed the convening of an international conference on the human environment. This proposal paved the way for the Stockholm Conference, which we will look into shortly. Despite its brief existence, international environment law has undergone remarkable growth and evolution. Today, there exist tens of thousands of environmental laws within individual states, and every country has established frameworks. Through these frameworks may differ in their levels of development to protect the environment. It's nearly impossible to identify significant international norms that don't touch open aspects of sustainable development. At the international level, there are hundreds of legal instruments, bilateral, regional, and multilateral treaties specifically dedicated to environmental issues or containing provision related to environmental protection. The current structures of international organization typically incorporate a convention, a commission, or working group that directly or indirectly address environmental concern. This scenario is no different in the institutions of the European Union and in Brazil, reinforcing that there is a fragmentation of international law when it comes to sustainable development. Let's take a closer look at the Marrakesh Agreement, the landmark treaty that established the World Trade Organization in 1994. The preamble determines if free trade is a tool for growth, it must align with the demands of sustainable development. In addition to my introductory remarks, I would like to highlight a notable criticism regarding the adoption of new international treaties on the environmental agenda. It often seems that we are forced to wait for a catastrophe to happen before the international community takes action, formalizing official declarations, resolutions from international organizations and international conventions. A special aspect of international environmental law is the trend towards multilateral regulations following global disasters. Furthermore, two famous examples, often cited in international literature, come to mind. Firstly, the oil spill stemming from the maritime disaster involving the American supertanker Tarin in 1967. This accident led to the adoption of the Brussels Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damage in 1969. Secondly, the catastrophic nuclear accident at Chernobyl in 1986 led to the implementation of two instruments at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Negotiations on a global agreement on marine and plastic pollution were launched after several reports showed an important environmental, social, and economic crisis due to the huge amount of plastic waste. Plastic is present in every aspect of our lives. We ingest it daily, we breathe it. It is seemingly omnipresent. In addition to the environmental and social aspects, there are imminent public health concerns. Marine plastic pollution stands as one of the most pressing environmental challenges confronting the international community. Shocking and estimating 13 million tons of plastic find their way into our oceans annually, causing serious social, environmental, and economic damage, as well as possible harm to human health. These direct circumstances call for enhancing regulatory measures, including the implementation of public policy and legal and economic mechanisms. Now, let's watch this video. Just to see this catastrophe. Come here. This is a catastrophe situation. No, doesn't work. No, okay. Mas vai mal. It's okay.
The garbage patch, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex, is an area in the North Pacific where circulating water currents and wind movements have created an island-like area of concentrated big garbage patch, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex, is an area in the North Pacific where circulating water currents and wind movements have created an island-like area of concentrated floating plastic garbage. Constantly growing, it is believed to increase in size tenfold every decade. American oceanographer Charles Moore first encountered the garbage patch, also known as Trash Island, in 1997 when returning to California after finishing the Los Angeles to Hawaii Transpac yacht race, and reported that it took him 7 full days to cross it 20 years later, and this monstrosity measures around 1.6 billion square kilometers and contains approximately 80.
I just want to show you that's necessary catastrophe to start a negotiation of a treaty. Yes. So we have just analyzed when in what context the emergence of international environment protection occurred. If you are in the question about the negotiation of the plastic treaty, asking Adriana. Her thesis is about this subject. We have just analyzed when in what context the emergence of international environment protection occurred. We now need to understand how these international legal instruments are adopted by the nation. Thus, we move on to the second topic of our lecture today. When discussing international environmental protection, we must quickly remember 3 major international conferences. Stockholm in 1972, Rio de Janeiro in 1992, and Rio 20 in 2012. So you might ask me, but Tarin, what are other conferences? Which ones?
Kyoto Paris.
Sorry?
Kyoto and Paris.
No, because this is a conference of parts. It's not a multilateral conference on sustainable development. Can anyone provide information? What is the importance of this conference for the promotion of sustainable development? What do you think about something?
Connectedness, cooperation in these conferences, and it's really important.
Yes, perfect. Nobody else? Okay. During my discussion, in this historical analysis, I will interject parentheses, okay, to establish a connection with the contemporary things on the multilateral agenda. Okay, I believe this will enhance everyone understands of the challenges in advocating and promoting sustainable development. Let's begin with the Stockholm Conference. The United Nations Conference on the Human Environment was the first global political gathering on the environment. It is thus considered by professors as a historical milestone of international environmental law, marking the new steps on the modern era of environmental action. Within the geopolitical context of the Stockholm Conference, the dichotomy between global north and global south countries was already part of the multilateral sustainable development agenda. What was the geopolitical context at the time? In 1972, Cold War, yes.
And also, I think, given the schism between the Soviet Union and China that was kind of started, and without the first common efforts of the global south, the Berlin Conference.
Yes. So the conference occurred at the Cold War. And moreover, a significant number of developing countries had joined the United Nations system as they had gained independence and wanted to protect their right to pursue their own development path. In other words, developing country could not be sacrificed for environmental issues, as this concern could hinder industrialization policies in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The pressure for environmental limits imposed on global South countries was seen as a tool used by the global North to block the economic development of the South. An attitude reflected in the speeches of the diplomats from global South countries who disagreed with the environmental issue. They argued for the same rights as global North countries to destroy the environment during the period of economic development. Such opposition were clearly articulated by developing countries. Let's see Brazil. Welcome to pollution. We are open to it. Brazil is a country that has no restrictions. We have several cities that would welcome your pollution with open arms because we want jobs and dollars for our development. This was the speech of Brazilian diplomats. In the African countries, if you want us to be clean, pay for our soup. Another interesting discourse highlighted in the latest UNEP document of the future of sustainable development in from Prime Minister Angela Merkel, who said in her speech at the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm in 1972, it's not poverty and needy the greatest polluters. These statements find their foundation in the concept of the right to development, which paradoxically has been associated with the right to exploit and deplete natural resources. I want to open a parenthesis before analyzing the legal instruments adopted during the Stockholm Conference. Sorry. And reading this north-south dichotomy to the current context of the multilateral agenda for energy transition. For example, you are following I think that you are following the battle of countries, especially the European Union, to achieve carbon neutrality. Okay? The world has been discussing how to achieve this decarbonization by 2050. So I would like to leave just a reflection for you. I will not delve into it, but only provide elements for our reflection so that you understand the discussion of the North-South dichotomy, bringing it to a current context. The European Union, to meet the demand for electric vehicle batteries, will need various raw materials, such as lithium, okay? And by 2030, it will need 18 times more lithium compared to the current supply. But there is a significant problem. The European Union does not produce lithium. So the European Union will need to import this raw material to achieve energy transition. Where will this raw material be imported from? Mainly from Africa and Latin America. In this sense, cooperation agreements and memorandum of understanding between the European Union and the third countries such as Chile, Argentina, Brazil, among others, for the supply of critical raw materials were intensified in 2023. paving the way for an increasing in lithium importance. But here is the flip side. Are we turn a blind eye to the environmental and social repercussions of the limited mining activities? As we race towards an apparently greener future, are we trampling on the rights and the livelihoods of communities in resource-rich regions? Think about it. In my professional journey, I have observed a worrying trend. The government, they are focused on economic gains to the detriment of social and environmental justice. It seems that decision makers, especially at subnational level, in Brazil, for example, prioritize short-term prosperity over long-term sustainability. Here is the crucial point. Is our striving for certain sustainable development goals increasing inequality instead of reducing them? So let's reflect on these points. Returning for close the parentheses. Return to 7.2. Despite all the challenges in promoting consensus, 3 documents were adopted. Would anyone know which documents were adopted in 1972? No? Nobody? No? No. Okay. The first one was the Stockholm Declaration, also known as the United Nations Declaration on the Human Environment, which, in my opinion, forms the foundation of international environmental law. It becomes crucial to delve deeper into the legal implication of this pivotal text. Its legal significance is underscored by the inclusion of 27 principles, rendering it a document of comparable importance to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's crucial to emphasize that the Stockholm Declaration holds a distinct position as a global guidance, provides a comprehensive framework for filtering endeavors in the realm of the human environment. Recognized as a source of inspiration for the majority of the conventional standards governing environmental protection, it serves as a touchstone for a legal doctrine, international judicial decision, arbitral proceeding in the several activities of the governmental and non-governmental entities. A contemporary illustration of the relevance of the Stockholm Declaration is the case of the request for an advisory opinion on climate change transmitted to the International Court of Justice, led by the Republic of Vanuatu. This initiative, approved last year during the United Nations General Assembly, is grounded in part on the Stockholm Declaration, highlighting its relevance. This emphasizes not only the historical importance of the declaration, but also its contemporary applicability. The advisory opinion will explore critical issues, notably the obligation of states under international law to protect the climate system and other facets of the environment from greenhouse gas emissions. The Stockholm Conference legacy extends beyond the declaration itself. The plan of action for the human environment, with its 109 recommendations, though not directly aligned with the contemporary sustainable development objective, holds historical significance. Equally crucial is the resolution that created the United Nations Environment Programme, catalyzing the formation of pivotal international environmental treaties and institutions like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service. In addition, the impact of the conference accelerated the formulation of the main international environment treaties that predated the Rio Conference, like the Ramsar Convention, the UNESCO Convention. Furthermore, the Stockholm Conference played a vital in proper institutional and legislative action by governments of the United Nations member countries, leading to the establishment of ministries, specialized bodies, and the development of environmental law. Notably, in Brazil's establishment of a special secretariat for the environment in 1974, influenced by the conference outcomes, with its ideas later enshrined in the national 1982 Constitution. I now invite you to share your perspectives of the role of the Stockholm Conference in your respective countries. I don't know where you're from Italy, from Georgia, from, I don't know. Do you know? Do you have some perspective about this? Nothing, the influence of the Stockholm Conference in the Constitution, in the legislation? Nobody knows.
I think, yeah.
Where are you from?
I don't have a law background. I'm from the Netherlands, not from law, but I think what I hear most is the Club of Rome.
Yes.
Which are more, I think, those are more seals and milestones maybe, or more referred to than the Stockholm Conference.
Yes, sure. Yes.
In the political arena.
Yes. Nobody?
And also from the Netherlands, there's a big emphasis, I think, on the 23 goals, maybe more than besides Paris.
Perfect. In summary, today's discussion highlights a clear observation. The United Nations Declaration of the Human Environment, known as the Stockholm Declaration, is more than a historical aspect. It has served as a guideline, establishing essential principles that shape both national laws and major international environmental agreements. The enduring importance of the Stockholm Declaration highlights its fundamental role in shaping the course of global values and governance and promoting sustainable development around the world. The second conference is the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, held in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, known Earth Summit. The Rio 92 conference marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of international environmental discussions, constituting the second significant step in this trajectory. In fact, it is essential to emphasize that 1990 were marked by a wave for global conference convened by United Nations. Issues such as children's rights, gender equality, human settlement, and social development emerged in the discussions between world leaders. This meeting played a fundamental role in unity sectors that had previously been sidelined. However, none of them had the same impact as the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. During this conference, countries recognized that issues that had previously been considered local were now having a global dimension. A consensus emerged that the existing development model was sustainable for the next century. During the conference, states approved 3 documents that laid down the fundamental normative principle of international environmental law: the Rio Declaration, The new declaration presented 27 principles, including earlier concepts like the precautionary principle, public participation, and environmental impact assessment. Notably, it introduced the principle of common but differentiated responsibility, stemming from commitment between North and South nations. This declaration laid the groundwork for sustainable development, which prevents the way for three major conventions. Now, the Convention on Biological Diversity, Convention on Climate Change, and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. The second document was Agenda 21. This action plan serves as a comprehensive roadmap for states' actions throughout the 21st century. It was also a pivotal reference for both public and private entities in discourse and in management strategies. Governmental and corporate bodies at various levels use it to align with Agenda 21. However, in modern times now, it has been replaced by the ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance Agenda. The next document was Declaration of Principle on Forest, remarkable state failures to achieve consensus on adopting a dedicated convention for forests. The state progress in this area prompts inquiries into the reason behind it. Does taking deeper understand our courage to examine the preparatory discussion of the conference, offering valuable insights into the North-South dichotomy. Today, there is a convention on forests. In conclusion, the Rio 92 conference significantly changed the landscape of international environmental discourse, laying the foundation for key principles and conventions that continue to be fundamental in global sustainable development efforts. In 2012, 20 years after Rio 92, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development was held in Rio de Janeiro again, known as Rio Plus 20. This historic conference aims to reaffirm the global commitment to sustainable development, with a focus on two pivotal themes: promoting the green economy, the context of sustainable development, and poverty eradication, and enhancing the institutional framework for sustainable development, including exploring the possible establishment of an international environmental organization. The document titled "The Future We Want" was adopted at the conclusion of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. This extensive report is rich in complexity, and I highly recommend reading it for a deeper understanding of the conference outcomes. In contrast to legal advances made in 1992, Rio Plus 20 failed to adopt any binding agreement for states, with the only result being the future we want. Several factors contribute to this expected outcome. The refusal of states to engage in binding agreements or new common principle, the absence of a comprehensive evaluation of the 1992 agenda, and the conference inability to revise Agenda 21. Notably, there was no proposal for a new convention, and the participation of heads of state was minimal. The lack of consensus during the preparatory phase significantly impacted progress of the final documents, resulting in limited debates on the future trajectory of sustainable development. During Rio Plus 20, discussion on the reorganization of sustainable development governance include deliberation on the creation of a world environmental organization. The behind this proposal was to consolidate the various conventions adopted in recent years, given the fragmented nature of international environmental governance. However, consensus on the creation of a new international organization, because there is an organization for everything: the trade, education, maritime, but there is a world environmental organization. So instead opted to strengthen and improve the United Nations Environment Program, establish the United Nations Environment Assembly. Currently, the United Nations Environment Assembly is the main global decision-making body on environmental issues. It meets every 2 years to shape the global environmental agenda, provide comprehensive policy guidance, and devise policy responses to emerging environmental challenges. Established against the backdrop of several existing treaties, each with its own secretariats and mandates, the United Nations Environment Assembly has emerged as a key entity for identifying, prioritizing, and coordinating global responses to pressing issues like the plastic agreements. It's essential to grasp that United Nations Environment Assembly negotiations diverge from those of other environmental bodies like Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, Nagoya Protocol. Instead of coordinating treaties, country representative introduced resolution as evidence in discussion surrounding the plastic waste agreements and nitrogen management. However, a notable challenge in the rules of the meeting, it is the next United Nations Environmental Assembly will be the next, I think that's next week. Yes, and we'll think on fostering effective, inclusive, and sustainable multilateral action to combat climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. However, a notable challenge looms over this meeting next week. I think that will be next week, as it coincides with the Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization. This schedule represents a potential risk to the overall process of ratifying the multilateral sustainable development agenda. Returning to Rio Plus 20, I would like to underscore a positive aspect of the event: the incorporation of conservation and sustainable use of the ocean into the document, The Future We Want. What is this significance? For years, the international community, including states and the European Union, primarily focused on safeguarding the terrestrial ecosystem. However, reports from international institutions revealed that oceans worldwide are gradually feeling the impacts of human occupation and utilization without adequate legal protections. These issues covers 71% of the claimants, of which we have less than 5% knowledge. From a Brazilian standpoint, while the international community often highlights the protection of the green Amazon. I know that everybody knows green Amazon first. Okay, but I'm not sure if you know the blue Amazon, the ocean, blue Amazon. Have you heard of the blue Amazon? Where is the blue Amazon? It spans in the area equivalent to 67% of our terrestrial territory, with dimension biodiversity like the Great Amazon. Despite the vast location of Blue Amazon, the ocean, Brazil lacks strategic and public policies related to the marine environments. This underutilization of marine resources underscores missed opportunities for sustainable development. Currently, Brazil does not have a strategy for Blue Amazon. As you can see from the slide, the Blue Amazon is a huge. Look at the number of countries that fit into the Blue Amazon. This is a ocean space. Okay. So, I close the parentheses. In 2015, the 2030 agenda was adopted, representing a commitment from our countries participating in the United Nations Summit on Sustainable Development. It serves as the main framework for shaping executing public policy globally, comprising 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 associated targets to be achieved by 2030, supplanting the Millennium Development Goals adopted in 2000. Has anyone looked at all 17 objectives and their 169 targets? Yes or no? Yes. No. What I emphasize to my students is that research cannot analyze the sustainable development goals in isolation, okay? But must adopt an integrated approach. For instance, if you research focus on gender, on marriage transition, you cannot solely concentrate on the one goal, as it's insufficient. Progress necessitates to analyze all of the connected sustainable development goals. Example, Adriana. Suppose Adriana is studying marine plastic pollution. In that case, she needs a comprehensive understanding of all the sustainable development goals, not just the number 14. Regarding the conference, we can mention the Rio +5 conference held in New York in 1997, the first conference to evaluate progress in Rio 92. Unfortunately, it was deemed a fail due to its vague action plan with imprecise objectives. The conference president, Maurice Strong, summarized the fail. We must title for affirm our incompetence and our inability to act. This 1997 statement was presenting the main message of COP28 in Dubai last year about the need for action. Another notable conference is the Johannesburg Summit, or the International Summit for Sustainable Development in South Africa. This summit assesses the decade following Rio 92, adopted an action plan and a political declaration comprised nearly 37 items. This period between the Earth Summit, Rio de Janeiro Summit, and the Johannesburg Conference was perceived as disappointing, with some referring to it as Rio -10, rather than Rio +10. Lastly, let's touch on Stockholm +50, a gathering convened by the United Nations General Assembly in Stockholm, Sweden, in 2022. The event marks the 50th anniversary for the 1972 United Conference on the Human Environment, themed Stockholm +50, a healthy pledge for the prosperity of our responsibility, our opportunity. Despite receiving less public attention, each outcomes are worth nothing. Who follows these events and the work its results? No? Who follow this conference? Nobody? No? Stockholm +50? No? Stockholm +50 acknowledge the three planetary crises facing the world: climate change, pollution and waste, and biodiversity loss. These crises pose risk to human health, prosperity, equality, and peace. The conference emphasized the critical role of multilateralism in tackling these challenges. The challenges of 50 years ago are now seen as crises, and there was a renewed urgency regarding implementation. We need to think about the implementation of all these treaties. These declarations of intention have been made before. However, many opportunities have been lost, and several commitments are still unfulfilled. Poverty persists despite economic growth in some regions of the world. The environment continues to be explored as if our planet's resources were endless. The world is facing unique systemic risks, evidenced by crises like energy, conflict, food security, biodiversity loss, rising sea levels, pollution, and global warming. Does setting ambition goals for the next 10 or 20 years make a difference without discussing how to implement them? Does our planet have another 50 years to reverse this crisis? What do you think about?
Personally, I think it does. We have termed like that the planet is going to be destroyed every 10 years by a crisis, but we always find a way to mitigate it.
Yes.
Maybe not totally, but still.
I disagree.
For those, I recommend reading negotiation documents, okay, and the country's position. It's very interesting to read all these position papers, offering valuable insights into the past 50 years and the imperative action for the future. The core of our conversation discussion today isn't solely what should be done, but rather what can be done to enhance the effectiveness of defending and promoting sustainable development. States must prioritize systemic transformation and ensure the involvement of all stakeholders. In 2023, the midpoint of implementing the 2030 agenda, the United Nations stated that no country is on the right track. Progress on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals has stagnated, over the past 3 years, with regression observed in some areas. This raises a question about political will and the necessary choice to alter all course. A primary reason of this behavioral state is the insufficient focus on the pivotal issues of reducing inequality, in my opinion. Implementation efforts will falter if policies promoting sustainable development only benefits certain groups or worse, exacerbate inequality. So far, efforts to uphold the unified goals of the 2030 agenda have focused on policy coherence, which means aligning policies to support each other and create positive outcomes. However, despite its importance, this approach hasn't fully delivered on its promise to maximize benefits and minimize conflict between different policies. If the governments are serious about achieving the goals of the 2030 agenda while ensuring inclusivity, they need to rethink their approach to policy coherence. Reducing inequality should be at the core of sustainable development policy. It requires political courage and societal action to ensure that development policies don't affect the most vulnerable. When formulating policy, we need to ask the question: do they benefit everyone, or do they favor certain groups? Ignoring pre-existing inequality when implementing policy can further marginalize vulnerable communities. In today's polarized world, finding common ground might seem difficult, but imagine if events like the Stockholm Conference hadn't taken place. In 2022, the United Nations General Assembly's resolution recognized the right to a clean environment was a significant step forward. It paves the way for legal and constitutional change that can protect the environment and uphold environmental rights globally. While international instruments cover a broad spectrum of topics related to sustainable development, they often operate in isolation from one another. Despite addressing the connected ecological issues such as climate change, oceans, forests, biodiversity, these areas are governed by separate texts with little integration or connection to other global regimes. This fragmented approach limits the effectiveness of efforts to address overarching challenges and blocks comprehensive solutions to complex environmental issues. In 2022, pivotal events shaped the multilateral sustainable development agenda, with Conference on Ocean, Climate Change, Desertification, and Biodiversity taking center stage. Several international instruments covered from the Soviet to hard law were adopted, including the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan, and the Landline Legacy Declaration. While these agendas are complementary, their full potential depends on enhanced integration. For instance, progress in ocean-related issues cannot occur in isolation from addressing climate change and biodiversity concern. Therefore, a holistic approach is imperative, as a fragmented analysis of this agenda presents significant challenges. So the year 2023 marks a pivotal midpoint for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The preliminary annual progress reports from the United Nations Secretary General has known concerning trends. 140 measurable targets were on track. Almost half of them were not doing well, with about 30% either staying the same or getting worse compared to 2015. I have a video, but I don't have time. After you can see, the video is very interesting. It can show all this data about the reports, the midpoint assessment of Agenda 2030. I recommend reading this report, please. Very, very interesting. Okay. Because this video will spotlight the serious data of the 2030 Agenda, okay? Shedding light on the pressing issues such as extreme poverty, education problems, slow progress in renewable energy, and inadequate access to electricity and clean foods for millions. So it's a quick video. Against this backdrop of growing concern, the United Nations Secretary General has announced a high-level event scheduled for September 2024, aimed at convening global leaders. The focus will center on the practical aspect. How can we enhance cooperation to achieve the aspiration and goals outlined? How can we effectively address current needs while proactively preparing for future challenges? In the next, I will talk very quickly about the Summit of the Future. Okay. So the question is, what will the world be like in 20 years? How can we cooperate more effectively to achieve our aspiration for 2030? What we can do?
Say solve the security issues first today.
Yes.
For example, Russia, geopolitical competition between China and the USA.
Yes.
Yes.
European Union and China.
Yeah, Russia
as well.
There is African.
Yeah, energy consumption problems and Middle East issues. Those can be solved.
And how? How?
Cooperation with the diplomatic needs.
The world has undergone significant transformation since the first SDG summit in 2019 and the adoption of the 2030 Agenda in 2015. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, our world was veering off course in achieving most SDG. The problem is climate change related crises, including drought, extreme weather events, land loss, rising sea level, coastal erosion, ocean acidification, glacier retreat, biodiversity loss, desertification, sandstorms, and various forms of pollution, the plastic pollution, present imminent threats for the world. In the middle of a complex geopolitical landscape and a global electoral agenda, especially here in the European Union, it's imperative to capitalize on opportunities at both international and national levels. In 2024, a pivotal moment in advancing the multilateral sustainable development agenda is on the prioritizing with the future summit, team's multilateral solution for a better future. This summit holds the potential to greatly advance the Sustainable Development Goals implementation forward. However, its success depends on achieving a broad scope, garnering widespread recognition in delivering transformative, inclusive outcomes. I recommend reading documents, A Pact for the Future. Okay, this document will discuss during the Future Summit, September 2024. This document will consist of 5 chapters. The main subjects: sustainable development, of course, and financing for development, international peace and security, science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation, youth, and future generation, and global governance transformation. Subject to intergovernmental agreements, there may be additions such as global digital pact and a declaration of future generation. I will conclude. Achieving the goals set forth in the 2030 agenda demands a revitalization of multilateralism and bolstering of institutions. With only 6 years remaining, it's imperative to close the gap between aspiration and reality. Thank you. Also, I have another things to talk about. I see the well, thank you once again for your time, for your participation. Right from this piece of knowledge and planet here today. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. It was very interesting, your lecture. Thank you very much. And I wondered, some people talk about that the next step maybe is giving the rights to nature, or treating nature as a legal subject. What is your view on that?
Yes, this is an interesting question. In fact, in my university, there is a research group that works with this subject. It's, I think that we need action efforts. Okay, action efforts. And the second thing that we need is the financial system. Okay, it's important to talk about the nature laws, but I think that we need to action. That's why I will talk about this. I think that the critical imperative for 2024 is the financial system. We need to change the financial system and to develop to advance the sustainable development. Okay, this is a big important for all the world.
Will you consider the results of the Dubai conference in 2023 as a reaffirmation of the status quo or an actual setback regarding sustainable development?
I was there in COP20 in Dubai. It was, I think that was a complex discussion there because, in fact, the countries are advancing what they reduce the first few years, but I'm not sure because The problem is how can I finance the energy transition and the climate transition and the ocean transition? This is the problem. The dichotomy, north and south, it's a challenge for to enhance the neutrality by 2050. I give you the example about the lithium. It's a really problem in the world, the inequalities. That's why I recommend to think about the necessity of equality between the countries to enhance the neutrality by 2050.
So how can we motivate the countries to abandon brutal oil extraction that has detrimental effects on the environment on one hand, and on the other hand, it also has economic benefits. So what are the ways and tangible ways to contribute to environment? Which also relates to
That your question is a PhD. A really PhD. Complex. Because I think the Stockholm conference we are discussing about this. How can we finance the energy transition? How? Because every conference there are a lot of discussion about we need $10 billion when I don't know, but the developing countries, the north, global north countries, I don't know if they are really engaged financing this energy transition, for example, to combat climate change. I'm not sure. I think that in the European Union, there is a lot of regulation about the climate change, the European Green Deal. Yesterday, I talked about this. Since 2019, the European Union adopted step 1 action regulation about to achieve neutrality by 2050. Okay, but if we analyze the case of the lithium, what kind of transition you are talking about? Just for a specific region? So it's a really problem because I worked with this subject in my state in Brazil. We have a lot of wind, we have a lot of sun, we have a lot of renewable energy, but there are a lot of business, European business in my region, Brazil. But what kind of deal this European business is doing there? I work with the non-government institution. It's very serious, the situation of the vulnerable communities there. So now here in Europe, there is a discourse about the hydrogen, green hydrogen. In Brazil, we want to become exporter to the European Union. But how? We need to discuss accessibility. There are a lot of people in Brazil that don't have accessibility to for energy. And how Brazil will export the energy, the green energy. But there is a lot of people that don't have access to energy. So I think that we think about that's why I recommend for my students that we need to think about all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. When you talk about energy transition, we need to talk about the climate change, the green cities, the accessibility. So it's a complex, it's a very difficult subject to think about this. That's why the dichotomy that I told you during the Stockholm conference, this dichotomy exists in 2024. So it's a challenge, not a challenge, it's a crisis. We have three crises: climate change,